Chapter 19, Letters in Every Mailbox. The framers of the Federal Constitution in 1787 gave Congress the power to establish post offices and post roads. A post road was a main road with special stations to provide fresh horses for the riders who carried the mail. For some years, almost all postal service was on one main post road along the Atlantic coast. People used the mail very little. When George Washington was president, letters in the mail averaged less than one for every 12 Americans each year. In those early years, the person who received a letter usually paid the postage. If he did not want to pay the postage, he never got the letter. Of course, there was no home delivery. To get your mail, you had to go to the post office. Even after Philadelphia had a population of 150,000 people, everybody in the city who wanted his mail had to wait in line at the post office. Then, in 1825, the dim beginnings of modern mail delivery began. The post office gave postmasters in every town permission to hire mail carriers to deliver letters to people's homes. The carriers still received no government salary. They lived by collecting a small fee from everyone to whom they delivered a letter. If you were not at home to pay, you would have to leave your letters in the mailbox. You would not leave your letters in the mailbox. By the 1840s, the growing country desperately needed a cheap and efficient postal system. The government service was still so haphazard and expensive that there was widespread demand to abolish the post office. People called it an odious monopoly and said that private businesses could do much better. As a result, in 1845, Congress passed a law establishing cheap postage, and it tried to reform the whole system. At first, each postmaster printed his own stamps, but that led to chaos. Then, in 1847, the reformed Post Office Department issued the first national postage stamps. A 5-cent stamp showing the head of Benjamin Franklin and a 10-cent stamp with the head of George Washington. In 1847, Congress passed a law that made it illegal to use any postage stamp in the United States not authorized by the U.S. Postmaster General. Above are the first two postage stamps authorized by the U.S. Post Office Department. Notice that they have no perforations. For the first 10 years that the post office issued stamps, they had to be cut apart. At the time these stamps were issued, it cost 5 cents to send a letter weighing less than an ounce up to 300 miles. It cost 10 cents to send the same weight any distance more than 300 miles, or to send up to twice the weight that could be delivered by a 5-cent stamp. Now the person who mailed the letter would pay the postage. Some people objected. They said that if a person really wanted to receive a letter, the least he could do was pay the postage. Before postage stamps, people would simply fold their letters and write the address on the outside. But now, letters became more private because everybody began to use envelopes they could seal. With the growth of the railroads just before the Civil War, it was possible to carry the mail much faster than on horseback or by stagecoach. But when a train arrived at a railroad station and dropped several large bags of mail, someone had to sort it, and that caused annoying delays. Then in 1865, the railway mail service began using specially designed railway cars to sort the mail while it was in transit. There were still problems of how to pick up mail from small towns along the track, where the trains did not even stop for passengers. But a clever new gadget, the mail bag catcher, enabled the speeding train, as it passed, to snatch a bag of mail hanging beside the track. Postage stamps, too, became a way of bringing Americans together. The pictures on stamps reminded the nation of its heroes, like Franklin and Washington, and told of great events, past and present. The first commemorative series of American postage stamps appeared in 1893, at the time of the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago. 16 large stamps in different denominations showed scenes of Columbus and the discovery of America. In 1938, the Post Office issued a complete series of presidents. From the very beginning, the Post Office had a rule against using the images of persons still alive. Even after postage stamps were introduced, at first they paid for delivery only as far as the post office. They did not include delivery to anybody's home. About the time of the Civil War, when private letter-carrying businesses were delivering mail to the home address on the envelope, they were often speedier than post office mail. The post office began to provide the same service, only to compete with them. Finally, in 1863, Congress provided a regular salary for letter carriers. They took the mail from the post office and delivered it to home addresses. This service was available only in the cities. By 1887, a city had to have at least 10,000 people to be eligible for free home delivery. But most Americans still lived on farms or in small towns. As late as 1890, nearly 3/4 of people in the United States never received a letter unless they went to the post office to collect it. The old-fashioned system had its points. People did not receive junk mail they didn't want. The general storekeeper was commonly the village postmaster. When the post office was in a corner of the general store, between the dry goods and the farm tools, the system brought customers to the general store. There, too, farmers would enjoy meeting friends from the whole countryside who had come for their mail. But it was also a nuisance. Farmers never received mail unless they came to town. They were out of touch with the news. No wonder farmers had a reputation for being out of date. In 1889, a go-getting department store pioneer from Philadelphia, John Wanamaker, became Postmaster General. He decided it was time for a change. The whole nation would profit if all Americans, not just city dwellers, had mail delivered to their mailboxes. Wanamaker's plan would finally bring the mail to farmers. He called it Rural Free Delivery, RFD for short. RFD became the farmers' battle cry, and there really was a battle. On one side were the farmers who wanted a mail-order catalogs, mail-order packages, and newspapers delivered to their doors. They wanted to be in touch with the world every day. On the other side were the village storekeepers. They wanted to keep the farmers coming into their stores to get their mail, and incidentally, to do some shopping. If it became too easy to shop by mail, the farmers might buy all their goods from Sears and Ward's, and country stores would lose their customers. At the same time, in the 1890s, many American farmers in the West were suffering from drought and hard times. Farmers were organizing in their Grange clubs, which had supported Ward's, and in their populist political party. And many city people, too, wanted to help farmers, especially if they could do so in some way that would help make the cities prosper. In 1896, Congress adopted RFD, and in one of the great American organizing achievements of the 19th century, the post office laid out 9,000 new routes in 1 year. The Postmaster General approved the design for a standard rural mailbox, and that design, ever since, has served as the trademark of country life. RFD helped open the world to farmers. Now, when they ordered from Sears and Ward's, their goods came promptly by RFD. Soon, farmers insisted on and received the latest styles and the newest improvements. Farmers were no longer back numbers, as they used to be called. Now, at last, they shared with other Americans all the news of the world. When their only way of receiving mail had been weekly trips to the village, no sensible farmer would subscribe to a daily newspaper. Who wanted an armful of stale newspapers once a week? But now, newspapers would come to farmers' mailboxes every single day. In 1911, RFD delivered over 1 billion newspapers and magazines. In 1893, the United States became the first country in the world to offer what are known as commemorative stamps. They commemorate special events rather than merely honor famous people. The 1893 series of 16 stamps commemorated the World's Fair held in Chicago that year. The fair itself was held to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Columbus's voyage to America in 1492.